Okay, we're starting with sukkah. And very easy to find the place because we are on base Amud Aleph. We'll take it as if we did Daf Aleph already. That went really, really well. No problems with that whatsoever. So we start with the Mishnah. There's the Mishnah. Sukkah. It's actually this first stuff is very nice and easy, gentle into the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Sukkah shi gavoa lemala me'esrim amma. A sukkah which is higher than. It's the last one. It's the last one. Yeah. Which is higher than 20 amma. The sukkah is possible. You do not fulfill the obligation of dwelling in a sukkah that is that high. It says Rush. There's no Rush at the moment, but we're going to see. We're talking here specifically about the schach. If the schach is over 20 ammas high, and 20 ammas is around about 30 feet, about 10 meters. Yeah, I said roughly. Yeah. We're still talking a fair distance, yeah? 30 foot, right? It's taller than any of us, right? It's definitely you and me, right? Even if I stood on your shoulders, you'd be higher than that, yeah? So, and we'll see the Gemara is going to offer 3 reasons why that is. It's possible. Rabbi Yehuda Makshir, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says no, it's kosher. Look at Rashi, top right-hand corner. It says Rashi, Gemara Faresh Plug Dahu. The Gemara is going to explain the plug to the difference between these 2 opinions. Mishnah continues, and if this corollary of that, a sukkah which is so small that it is not taller than 10 tefachim, and a tefach again depends on the size. The tefach is around about 8 to 10 centimeters, 3 inches. So if it's no more than 80 centimeters, 0.7 of a meter, the she'ena defanos, they take out the word shalosh here, but sarach lomo shalosh. Shalosh defanos is the right gender. The she'en la shalosh defanos, and it doesn't have 3 walls, and we'll see exactly what we mean by 3 walls a bit later. V'shechamasa meruba misilasa pusula, and its sun is greater than its shade, it's possible. Okay, there seems to be no machlokas there between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda on that. It appears to be. We'll see a bit more of that. But says the Tanakama that it's possible. Says, look at Rashi. Second Rashi, the end of the first line. V'she'ena guvara asara guvara mefarish timer. Gemara will explain why. Again, we've seen previously that whenever Rashi tells us that, the Gemara will explain why. It means there's some question about it. Obviously, why would it be that a sukkah which is less than that minimum height of 10 tefachim, why it would be possible? And shalosh tefanos, as our 3 walls, says Rashi again. Nami b'gemara yalef lehu. This is something we saw. Those who were at the seal will know that Dan Ben Zeta explained the difference between Gemara and Mefarish. When Rashi says, the Gemara will explain the reason. And here, Nami Gemara Yalef. Yalef means Yalfina means we derive. The Gemara will tell us where do we derive the fact that the sukkah has to have a minimum of 3 walls. As we know, we mean when we say 3 walls, mean 2 walls and a bit plus VAT. Rashi goes on, V'shechamasa meruba misilasa, and where the sun is greater than the shade. Hamuat batul barov. This is very interesting. What Rashi is saying here, even if there is some shade, but the sun is greater than the shade, so you've got enough schach. It's not as you've got no schach at all. You've got some schach, but because it's not enough, too much sunlight is coming through. And here we have the principle of batul barov. We have a simple majority. If there's more sun than there is shade, then the shade is mevatel. It's as if it's annulled. It's as if it's never there. V'harehu can be she'enoi, and therefore it's as if you've got no schach at all. Since whatever schach you have has been mevatel by the fact that there's not enough of it, and therefore the sun is in the majority to the shade. It's as if you've got no schach. And as we see, as I mentioned, alluded to the beginning, that a sukkah is called a sukkah because of its schach. It takes its name from schach, and therefore a sukkah. However, wonder how many walls you've got. It's immaterial if you don't have any schach. It's no good. So if the schach, even if you've got some schach, but the schach is nullified because it doesn't provide more shade than it does, and it allows more sunlight in. It's as if there's no schach there whatsoever, and therefore it has the sukkah itself has no shem sukkah because it has no schach. Okay, that's all we've got on the Mishnah. I want to share with you a little bit more in the Mishnah. It's beautiful, the beautiful sefer, which is Mishnayos Ma'arios, which is the illustrated Mishnayos. It's got also the Bartanura as well. So says the Mishnah, Sukkah Shigavola Malam Esrim Amma. So here's a nice picture. It is illustrated, yeah. A very tall sukkah, right? Very tall. You're talking about 30 foot. Yeah. So what's the issue with that? Says the Bartanura. The sukkah diras arai be'inan. As we're going to see, the Gemara is going to tell us that one of the opinions is one of the three reasons Gemara gives is that the sukkah has to be a diras arai. It has to be a temporary dwelling. The Pasuk says in Devarim, the festival of sukkahs you shall make for 7 days. Amra Torah, Asay Sukkah L'Shivas Yamim. The Torah is telling us, we'll see a bit more, I'm saying the Gemara, how the Gemara understands that. From the Pasuk, the way the Pasuk is written, the Torah is telling us that the Sukkah you should have should be for 7 days. Meaning for 7 days and 7 days only, 8 days in Chusaris, right? But what it means is a Sukkah that it would only last for 7 days. Something purely temporary. Says the Bartanura, and when it comes, if someone was to build a sukkah which is 20 amas or more high, the only way to build that would to build it with a type of permanency. There's no way of doing it. You'd have to build it in such a way where it would be permanent, and therefore you no longer have this concept of the requirement of diras arai. It's no longer a temporary dwelling, and therefore it's possible. However, we saw, says the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Machshir, Rabbi Yehuda is cholek on the Tanakama, disagrees with Tanakama, and says, no, it's okay. Why? The Sava, because he has the opinion, Sukkah diras keva be'inan. Actually, he says no. Says Rabbi Yehuda that actually the Sukkah itself actually should be a permanent structure. We do require a certain permanence to it, and in fact, halakha l'maaseh actually is a fine balance because, particularly when it comes to those canvas sukkahs, you've got to be really careful because you think, oh, how more temporary could you get than a canvas sukkah? You put it up before sukkahs, you take it down, and it's very, very flimsy. The issue actually is that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, would be, in fact, the pasuk halakha like Rabbi Yehuda, which is if it's too flimsy, meaning if a ruach matzui, thank you, a moderate wind, would make it flap more than a certain distance. I think it's 3 tefachim, if I remember correctly. Then actually it'd be possible. The walls will be possible because it's a diras arai. It's too temporary. Yeah, it's too flimsy. It has to have a certain element of keva to it. Sorry, Johnny Taylor's just asked me a question on the group. Anyone else want to answer it? Anyone on the group wants to answer it? Yeah. Is there a Zoom? It's the same as one we've always had. Do you mind? Yeah. Thank you.
And it goes back to what you said. The sukkah, the actual walls, and that do not define a sukkah. Sukkah is defined by the schach.
Yeah.
And that is what makes a sukkah. So in theory, it goes back to the first point, that you can have it as high as you wanted, because that doesn't define the sukkahs as long as it's the schach on the top, but then you've got the other problem of light and shade.
Right. So we're going to see. That's why the Gemara is going to offer 3 opinions. One of the opinions will say the reason why it can't be one is the one we just said. The reason why it can't be higher than 20 amas is because it has to be, according to Tanakama, it has to be arai. And when you build something 20 amas high, that's by definition is keva, right? Okay. So we see this. We're going to see interestingly. So we've got the 2 opinions. We've got Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. We see interesting halakha l'maaseh actually seems to be machmir between the 2 of them. Those who've been to come to our house and seen our sukkah will know that it is by definition keva because it is the walls of the house of the sukkah, right? So, and we're going to see that actually it's not markiv. It's not an issue if the walls are Arkeva.
You can see my boss. It's like Thunderbirds. He's got buttons on the side of his house, and his roof disappears out.
Oh, wow.
And then out the walls come these wooden poles and go down like this, go over like this.
Oh, amazing.
And then he goes up to his bedroom and he lays all the stuff on the top of it. It's like honestly, it's like something out of Thunderbird.
That's what they did when they came out of Egypt. Okay, so that's the first issue about the height of the schach. Then the Mishnah said, and if it's not at least 10 tefachim higher than it's possible, says the Bartanura, the dira seruchahi, because then it's a serucha literally means like disgusting. It's unpleasant, huh? Yeah, it's not. But it's not. I don't know why necessarily, but it means it's going to be unpleasant. It's going to be uncomfortable. As if there's a bad smell and they don't want to stay in there. It's too small. 10 tefachim, what you're talking about, 80 centimeters. You're going to be hunched up. Yeah, very cramped. That's another word. Right.
Livable.
Right, and we say Ke'ein Tedura. The sukkah should be during sukkahs like your home is during the rest of the year. And he says, Ve'ein Adam da b'dira serucha. No one stays in an unpleasant dwelling. So that's what we know the halach also. If for example, it's pouring with rain, or there's a bad smell in the sukkah, yeah, not in this country, or the flies are bothering you, then it's surucha for you. It's disgusting for you. It's unpleasant. You can actually go inside because then you're actually posa. Yeah, because mitzvah is possible in a sukkah. Because what is it? We'll see them. We're jumping ahead, but we'll see the reason why a person who's pained by being in the sukkah is exempt from the sukkah is because if it's something which would mean you'd leave your home because of it. So, for example, if chas v'shalom, you got a leak in your roof and the water is dropping down into your soup in your house, you're not going to stay in that room until you fix the leak, right? So similarly, if that's the same thing in your sukkah, you're entitled to leave the sukkah because then it's ke'ein tedura. It's the same way as you would live in your house. Okay, that's a very small sukkah. The next issue is v'she'ein la shalosh tefanos. It doesn't have 3 walls. Tichsiv basukos. There are 3 pesukim. Shnayim chaserim ve'echad malei. 2 of them are written chaser, lacking the vav. So although it's in the plural, it's written as if it's in the singular or the construct form, and 1 is written full. The parish sukkah tzchach. 1 is to tell you that the sukkah means tzchach. And the others, they're left to tell you that you need 3 walls. In fact, although we got the pesukim that teaches this, the Gemara actually is an asmachta. We're using it as a textual. Abi Remez, I said I know you said the word allusion tonight. I meant a support. Asmachta means a samach to support, to be supported on it. The Gemara, even though this is what you see this, whenever the Gemara will say halacha l'mamash Sinai, it always still goes to the process of saying, well, where's the posuk? Where do we know it from? What posuk can we base it on? So even if it's pure Torah Shabbal Peh, Moshe Rabbeinu was told it himself by Kodesh Baruch Hu. Nevertheless, the Gemara will always try and look for a posuk to support it. So it says, Asya halach Moshe Sinai. So Moshe Rabbeinu was taught, and we'll see this in the Gemara in a moment, that Moshe Rabbeinu was taught that sukkah needs minimum of 3 walls. He was taught what to mean by 3. It means at least 2 whole ones and 1 which is a tefach. And that leaves us 2 according to halacha, and the 3rd one even a tefach. Therefore, if you've got 2 walls, 2 full walls next to each other, and you've got a 3rd wall which is a tefach, umashu mamidu bepachos mishloshet samach le'echal mishtei tefanos, shechopachos mishloshet kalabud dami v'nechshav ki'ilu dofen shel arba tefachim v'nimsa rov dofen asoi. It's easier to show what you're talking about here. There are at least 2 ways of doing it. Okay, I think this is the one, wasn't it? Yeah, so that's the very small sukkah, Hashem Gavoa. Yeah, so you see the guy cramped down. Yeah. Even Jeremy and I would have to cramp down in there, wouldn't we, Jeremy? Yeah. I could be on your shoulders in that one though. Here's She'ena Shalosh Stefanos, doesn't have 2 walls. It doesn't have 3 walls. It has 2 walls. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so you've just done like that. So you made it into sort of like a cove, but not a right. Then you've got two options here. This is 2 full walls, and then you've got then you've got a third wall. My pointing in the right place. Just tell me if I'm pointing in the right place. You've got a third wall here, which is a tefach, right? So at least 8 to 10 centimeters of a plank. Yeah. If you place it within 3 tefachim of one of the walls, it's fine. Less than 3 tefachim, up to 3 tefachim, it's considered to be lavud. It's considered to be just an airspace, but it's still joined. Any more than that wouldn't be joined. So that's fine. Or you could do it. There's a more complicated one he talked about. Or you could do it like this. So those are the 2 walls are perpendicular. I want to use that word, but I don't know if it's the right word. Perpendicular when they're touching, right? Yeah. Okay. And so these are perpendicular. Sorry, it just reminds me of my old geography or economics teacher. He was Welsh. Perpendicular. Sorry. Reminds me how he used to speak. Perpendicular. And then, or you've got parallel. So again, you've got 2 full walls parallel to each other. You've got your third wall tefach within 3 tefachim. But we add here just a bit more because there's such a gap here. They actually require you to have the koro, so to have a beam going across. Okay, we'll come to that another time. So that's as about to know is are the 2 options you've got, and that's halakha Moshe Sinai. Yeah. Oh, don't joke, because the very first bit of Gemara is going to quote the Mishnah from Eruvin. Yeah.
Because we did it in Eruvin, wasn't it? It mentioned the sukkah height.
Not with me. I wouldn't touch Eruvin with a barge pole. Excuse me. With the Eruv pole. Sorry,
touch it with a korah.
Yeah. Go on.
So it talked about the height in Eruvin, didn't it? And it mentioned the sukkah as well, saying it's the airspace, not the scarf.
That's right. And that's the very first piece of the Gemara is going to compare our Mishnah to that Mishnah in Eruvin and say what's the difference, because we're going to see there's a very interesting difference there. I don't want to give the game away, but the Mishnah in Eruvin says if you've got a korah, you've got a beam. This is over a mavoi, over an alleyway. In order, according to Chazal, although an alleyway between the chaseros is considered to be a Rishus HaYachid, it has a resemblance to Rishus HaRabim because anyone can go in it. And therefore, Chazal were concerned that people might think that if you can carry the mavoi, then you can carry the Rishus HaRabim, and then they got a real problem. So what they said you need to put a korah, you need either a lechi, either put a beam. Sorry? Lechi, a post at the entrance to the mavoi, or you can put, it's good that you all know, great, or you can put a korah, a beam going across it, so like a lintel, right, going across the top of it. Now, the mission there is going to say it must be lower than 20 tefachim. Sorry, not tefachim, sorry.
20 amos.
Yeah, it can't be, if it's higher than 20 amos, you've got a problem.
You won't see it or know about it.
Right. Yeah, and the Mishnah quotes our Gemara. Sorry, the Mishnah quotes our Gemara and says the reason why is because just as in Sukkah, a Sukkah where the schach is higher than 20 amos, because the eyes don't look. That's one of the 3 opinions of why it's possible. Right. Again, so it's not noticeable. So no one looks that high up, and therefore it's as if it's not existence. But the Gemara is going to. So I won't tell you what the Gemara asks. The difference between our Mishnah and that Mishnah there. We'll come back to it in a second. Let's just finish Bartanura. So then the fact that we got is the next bit of the Mishnah was the last part of the Mishnah was and the sun is greater than the shade. So says the Bartanura, in case someone asks in shir, what happens if you've got equal? Yeah, the Mishnah says if the sun is greater than the shade, then it's possible. The obvious question is, what happens if they're equal? Says the Bartanura, it'd be kosher. Because then you haven't got bottle rove. Remember, you need a simple majority. Once you've got 51% sun to 49% shade, possible. But 50-50, you're good. But davka shein shavim milmata b'karkaros hasukah. He says specifically when they're equal below the sukkah, meaning below the schach, meaning on the ground of the sukkah. Meaning we want to know, and we'll see more in the Gemara about this. Rashi talks about it. We're talking about, I think, and the Tosfos also, that the ikka of where the shade and sun is on the in the ground at the bottom of the sukkah. Because if you think about it, different times during the day, depending on where the sun is, you're actually going to, the schach actually won't be giving you any shade. When the sun is quite low in the sky, it's going to be below the level of the schach, or the way it's going to be shining into the sukkah. In fact, remember, think of a year when it was actually sunny. Yeah,
I don't think it's a problem in England exactly. It's not really a problem. I wouldn't worry about it.
Thanks, Johnny. Let's wave the flag. Come on, let's get the flag out.
I can remember.
You're right. Okay, so definitely in Eretz Yisrael, right? But definitely in Eretz Yisrael.
That's where sunglasses in it.
We're here. Yeah, sometimes, not often. Often. So, but the point is, Johnny, that so tell us in Israel, Johnny, there's presumably a lot of the time the schach isn't giving you any shade at all.
Absolutely, it's very
not overhead.
In fact, it's very oppressive inside the sukkah. Yes.
Right, because of the heat.
The heat and the light and the sun. Yes.
Right.
A white. If the schach is just directly on the wall, if someone gets food.
No, if the sun is like in the afternoon where it's sort of
lower in the
there,
sky,
as opposed to there, you could be technically under your schach, but the shadow that the sun would make on the ground, the
ground of the city,
would make on the ground would be less than the actual thing of the schach. So what you're saying is, if the shadow on the ground is less than 50%, that makes the sukkah possible.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. Because that's the issue. The issue is going to be, and we see some of the Farshim talk about it, which is that what happens when is it
three-sided sukkah?
Yeah,
so
is it right? Is it because actually, because we're going to talk about actually, because the walls in that case, it's actually the walls that are giving you shade, not the schach. Because the walls are blocking out the sunlight, not the schach, because they're below the sunlight is coming in, it's penetrating below the level of the schach, depending on the sun, where the angle of the sun is.
But the schach has another function as well, doesn't it? Because at night time you have to see the stars. So there is actually, it's not only the sun which is an issue for the schach. There are other functions of the schach.
Yeah, but the mission has said that the schach has the minimum standard for schach is that it should cast more shadow than let in more sunlight. What I'm suggesting is there are times where because of the position of the sun, actually it's the walls are going to be contributing to the shade in the sukkah, and it's not just the schach. Yeah. Now others will say, I saw an idea that's because Sukkot is in the autumn, the only time of the year when the sun is, for example, at midday, is directly above you in the top of the sky is in the summer. Yeah, in the autumn, it's always at an angle. It never reaches its full height. It's in the southern part of the sky, I think it is. That's about as much astronomy as I know. I think it's astronomy. I think. Yeah. So there are occasions where, anyway, just for the moment, we're going to say that if it has to be if it's the schach which is giving you.
And there must be some parts of the world where it is summer when it's Sukkot.
The equator.
No, because well, you're talking about, like, for example, in Australia when it's winter here and it's summer there, and it's summer here, it's winter there.
So it's just
spring.
in
Spring
Australia.
Right, but then the sun's not going to be at its full height either in spring.
No, nowhere.
Only in summer. Only if Sukkot's in summer.
If you're in Singapore, it's full height the whole year.
Okay, so only if we and again only if we don't intercalate the months, would we end up with the possibility of Sukkot being in the summer, right? But because Pesach has to be in the spring, that means that Sukkot is always going to be 6 months later. Well, Rosh Hashanah is always going to be 6 months later, and therefore Sukkot is going to be always going to be a later time of the year. It's never going to be the full size of summer unless in Singapore. Okay, we'll see more of that later. I just want to raise that issue. And he says to be doer shemala mischach salasa mechamasa. He says because it's known that above the schach, the shade is greater than the sun. And then he talks about this idea of the sun casting a shadow. But if, for example, if you were to hold, he says this idea. The amri inshi kuzuzah milael istera milra. They say, for example, a zuz, which is a coin, above is like a istera, another type of coin below. What does it mean? Let me just find what it explains. Perush. When the sun penetrates through the holes, it's as large as the size of a zuz. Yiya oira nire be'aretz ka'astira shu miteba nechoshes v'rachab yotem mezuzah. And when it hits the ground, the light hits the ground, it appears to be the shape of this copper coin, which is wider than the zuz. So you've got a 5-penny piece, a modern 5-penny piece, and then a 2-penny piece, right? So when it starts up there, it's one size. When it comes through, the light it casts is wider, right? It dissipates, right? It spreads out. Okay. And then finally, no, we saw all of it, didn't we? Yeah. That's the next bit. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. We saw the Rashi, didn't we? Yeah. Says the Gemara. Tanan Hassam. It's taught in a Mishnah in a Reuven based on Aleph. Mavoi shu gavoa me'esrim amma. And if you look on the left-hand side, see the asterisk, see on the left-hand side of the margin, the square bracket says Sadi Lamed. Sarachaloma lemala me'esrim. The Mishnah actually there has the words milmala, which actually is a mirror of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said sukkah shi gavoa lemala me'esrim amma. The Mishnah in Eruvin says mavoi shu gavoa me. Sorry, not gavoa. Gavoa mimala me'esrim amma. So it's exactly the same Mishnah as ours, right? Meaning the wording is the same, except for the word mavoi and sukkah. So the Mishnah in the Eruvin says a mavoi, an alleyway, which means not what it itself is, but the korah, the beam that goes across it, is higher than 20 amas. Yimat, says the Mishnah there. You should lower it, bring it down. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein nesarach. Whereas we would say it's not necessary. Says the Gemara, Ma'ishna gabe sukkah tatani basula, Ma'ishna gabe mavoi tatani takanta. What's the difference between our Mishnah that said a sukkah whose schach is higher than 20, a sukkah that is higher than 20 amas is posel, and the Mishnah there that says a mavoi which is higher than 20 amas, what should you do? Yimat, reduce it. Takanta, it's not, they didn't say it's possible, they said repair it, remedy it, thank you, remedy it. Why does it say here possible straight out, nothing you can do? Whereas there it says do something about it and you'll be okay.
This is a Torah one, and the Eruvin is all rabbinical.
Very good, yeah, very good. Oh, so that's the Gemara's answer, thanks Ben. That's the Gemara's answer.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you just have to understand the question first. Yeah, look at Rashi. Look at Rashi explains to us what this whole mavoi is about. Mavoi shu gavoa, the first Rashi of the narrow lines. Mavoi shu gavoa, mavoi shu sasam mishlosh tzaddim, an alleyway which is closed off on 3 sides. Barosha patuch l'rishus harabim, and its opening opens onto the rishus harabim, onto the public domain. V'chatzeros patuchos loy v'yotzos, and the courtyards open onto it and go out from it. So the only way out from the courtyards, the way these houses used to be built were in like a square, in a courtyard. They all backed onto the same courtyard, or they all had their own courtyards, and that courtyard, they were all joined. The only way out from their courtyards was through this alleyway that led out into the Rishus Harabim. So it was a shared alleyway. Ubos the Rishus Harabim, and they'd go out through this onto the Rishus Harabim. Harehu Rishus Hayachid livnei chatzeros. This alleyway is in fact a Rishus HaYachid, a private domain for those people who have the courtyards. However, va'asru chachamim lohitzim rishuso l'rishus chaveiro b'lav erev. However, the chachamim prohibited people going from their rishus to the rishus of their friends without an erev. Shechatzeros kol achas rishus la'atzma, because each chatzer, each courtyard, is its own rishus. The mavoi rishus the kulan, whereas the mavoi, the alleyway, is a rishus for everybody. V'tzrichu ba shituf lehishtasef kol hachatzeros bepas or beyayin, and therefore Chazal required them to become partners, to join it together, all the courtyards together, either with each person donating some bread or some wine. Yeah, this was called shitufei chatzeros mavoi. And to leave this shared food in one of the courtyards. That's what we have in the shul here. Yeah, we've got the matzahs and the tuna. That because this is erev b'chaseros, similar idea. Now, since this maboi doesn't have a fourth wall, and therefore is getting close to being similar to a Rishus HaRabim, meaning it's open on a side. The definition of Rishus HaRabim is it's open, yeah, and therefore and anyone can go in and out of it. So we now got we've got two elements, two simanim of Rishus HaRabim, which is it's open on one side and anyone can go in it. That's almost a definition of Rishus HaRabim. Now we're concerned, Chazal were concerned. Therefore, hitzrichu heike b'rosho. Therefore, they require there to be some sort of symbol, reminder at its entrance, its opening. Habasuch Rishus HaRabim, which opened onto Rishus HaRabim. Oy lechi zakuf, either a vertical standing plank, a post, or kora mekotel lekotel, or a beam going from one wall to the other. But if the beam is placed higher than 20 amas on these walls, says you just can carry on in the Rashi. Rashi is just almost quoting the Gemara mission here by verbatim. Yimat, they should reduce it, says Rashi. Yashpil, lower it. Okay, so that's where we're up to in the Gemara. So you see the difference. Well, the obvious question is, so therefore, why not? Why in our Mishnah, why not say a sukkah that schach is higher than 20 amas? Just lower the schach. Why tell you it's possible? Why give us a chance? So says the Gemara. Sukkah, as Ben said, sukkah d'oraisa tani pasula. The sukkah, which is d'oraisa. So I'm just looking at the Ein Sarach. Where's the Ein Sarach coming from? In the Rashi, Ein Sarach. V'hasam mefarish timer. Sorry, Rabbi Yehuda says the machlok is in there. Sorry, Rabbi Yehuda says Ein Sarach. There's no need to lower it. V'hasam mefarish timer. The Gemara, their Gemara explains why. However, sorry, sukkah midoraisa says the Gemara. Sukkah, the halach in relation to sukkah that needs to have schach is d'oraisa. Therefore, tani pasula. Therefore, the Tana said, it's possible. You can't mess around. With the mitzvah d'oraisa, either it's kosher, it's possible. You can't mess about. Either you fulfill the mitzvah, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. You build a sukkah where the sukkah is too high, it's possible. However, mavoi, the rabbanon, tani takanta. However, the mavoi, the requirement of a mavoi when it comes to an alleyway to place this beam across is only the rabbanon. And therefore, we don't start saying possible and kosher with the rabbanons. Because the Rabbanon is, by definition, almost a di'eved anyway, because it's a chumrah. Yeah, some will say it's a chumrah because it's not strictly necessary. Al pi Torah, it's not a Rishus HaRabim. The mavoi is not a Rishus HaRabim because it doesn't have it's almost like a Rishus HaYachid. It has the use of it. Each individual has the use of it. And therefore, but the only reason Chazal did it is a chumrah because we were worried that if people were allowed to carry in it, they might then come to carry in the Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, you don't start saying when it's something which is the Rabbanon, it's possible, it's kosher. No, you say, if this is what it should be, and if you don't do that, then fix it. Do you understand the difference? Look at Rashi. Sukkah midoraisa, it's about parallel with the fourth line of the Gemara. Esrim amma dila, because the requirement or the negating factor of the 20 amas of it, yafinu midoraisa, is derived from the Torah itself. So this requirement of it being of the schach being lower than 20 amos is a Torah requirement. It's derived from the Torah. The Kodemish Nishnis Hamishna Nemra Shiura Misinai. And this requirement of the schach being lower than 20 amos preceded the Mishnah itself. Before we even learned this Mishnah, the Torah told us, Halacha Moshe Misinai, and we saw in the Batanura, Halacha Moshe Misinai, it has to be less than 20 amos. If you can't mess about with it. If it's not, the Mishnah doesn't have the permission to say yimat, reduce it. All it can say is posel or kosher. You can't mess around with Torah law. Whereas Mavoi, back in the Rashi, sorry, that's why it's Tani Pasula, next Rashi. Tani Pasula, that's why it taught Pasula. Shayech lemasnei ba loshen pasul. It's correct. The right loshen is to say posel. Kolomer lo nasis ketorah ukahalacha. To tell us, it's like psak halacha. This has not been made according to Torah law and halacha, and therefore the only thing we can say about it is possible. It's no good. However, Mavoi, look, it's in the Rashi. However, Mavoi, when it comes to the alleyway, to kulya midrabanan, where the whole halacha of the Mavoi itself is derabanan, to midoraita sagi lei b'shalosh mechitzos, ve'ein sarach lekora zeh ela midrabanan. Sorry, ve'ein sarach. Sorry, so midoraisa sagi lei b'shalosh mechitzos. According to Torah law, a Mavoi only needs 3 walls. Once you've got 3 walls, like we see with the sukkah, once you've got 3 walls, it's all good. So once you've got 3 walls of a Mavoi, you're good to go. You can carry in it on Shabbos without anything else. The only requirement of putting the beam across is itself derabanan. So that's a major distinction. The requirement of the beam in the first place is derabanan, and therefore, if somebody doesn't puts the beam but puts it too high, then there's only as an Isidore, it's only an issue with a derabanan, and therefore you can repair that, you can make that good. But the sukkah, where the requirement min HaTorah is that it has to be less than 20 amos. If it's not, then the Rabbanan have only got the permission to say, not repair it. They've only got permission to say it's possible. Torah doesn't give them permission to say anything else. However, with the Mabul, they can say in the Rashi, Tani Sakanta, they can teach you a remedy. In fact, in Rashi says it wouldn't be appropriate to say possible when it comes to the Rabbanon. Demand pasla kodim shnishnis mishnazu harehi techilas harasa mitzvasa. Because before the Chazal came along and taught us this halacha, there's no issue with it. There was no requirement of it whatsoever. So you can't come along and say, you didn't do it according to the Rabbanon and told you, therefore it's possible. Right? There was no requirement to do it min HaTorah. Therefore, if there's an issue, then the rabbis, the permission, the authority the rabbis had is to tell you how to remedy it. Let's look at the Tosafos on the left-hand side. Let's look at the first Tosafos, top left-hand corner. So it says the Mishnah said. So the Gemara starts off and says, "My shana gabe sukkah detani pesula, my shana gabe mavoi detani takanta." Why is this distinction between our Mishnah and the Mishnah in Eruvin? Fahadalo peruch my shana gabe hadas. Ask his first. You want to ask a different? What we want to ask on our Mishnah? Why you're telling us it's possible? Something that's over 20 amos high is possible. Why compare it to a Mishnah in Eruvin? Compare it to something else here in Sukkah. Compare it to Hadassim, right? To Tani Pasula, to Takanta. Where, in fact, very interestingly, it's even more of a question, because we're going to see in the Gemara that if you've got Hadassim, which are not kosher in a certain way, the Gemara itself is going to tell you how to remedy it. If the Hadas can't have certain species, well, all species, I think, all species of hadassim that come with berries on them. If you see them on the tree, they actually grow berries on them. Now, you're not allowed to have hadassim with berries on them. So what happens if you've got berries on them? Says the Gemara, take them off. Take them off. So it's not telling you possible, it's giving you a takana, it's giving you a remedy.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it would be possible to get to take it off.
It would be. Similarly, the sukkah would be possible if you lower the schach. Yeah. So either way.
You're saying that the remedy is only provided by something which is the Rabbanan. If it's from the Torah, you haven't got that latitude. You haven't got that flexibility.
That's what the Gemara is saying.
Yes.
That's what the Gemara is saying. Now, Tosfos is saying, hold on a second. Why compare it to a Dorabanan in Eruvin when you can compare it to a Doraisa here in Sukkah? Look at Rashi. Look at the Tosfos. It says you have to have 4 species. I mean, 8 avos of a nachal. So it's yeah. Because I come to the sun. Look at the third line of Tosfos. The Snan, it's taught in the Perek Lulav Hagazol, the third Perek. Or Shahayu Anavav Merubin Me'alav. If the branches are more than the leaves, possible. It says possible. V'mi'utzin kasher. However, if they're less, then they're kosher. So lo parich ela misukkah umavoy. And the fact that we don't ask the question from sukkah rather from mavoy, shedinam shaveh, where their halachas are the same, comparable. Ilini Govoa, Mishin Loshen, Mishnah Soiv, and it changed the language of the Mishnah. V'od Gabe Hadas Itzrich Limitne Takanta. Truth is, the reason why we can't compare it to Hadas is because the Mishnah had to provide a remedy. Why? Amina Kiven de Gedula Bepostle to Lace Le Takanta. Because the truth is, this is the way the Hadas grows. It grows with the berries on, or it grows sometimes with the branches more than the leaves. And if you don't provide a remedy, you're never going to get kosher hadassim. So the Mishnah had to provide a remedy. So it's not comparable here. Yeah, here the Gemara doesn't have to give you a remedy. You built your sukkah too high. Minat Torah, the Torah says you mustn't do that. It's possible. I'm not going to start giving you remedies. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah. So therefore, that's why we had to compare it to our Mishnah in Eruv. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, look at the next Tosfos. It says,
okay. How would he explain?
Says,
Oh no, that's just
Rabbi Yehuda Machshir. He says he's not concerned about the 20. We'll see. We'll have to see the tomorrow why that is. Yeah.
You see what he disagrees with that concept.
Yeah. But we often see that one person, the Tanakh will say possible and someone else will say kosher. Yeah.
How Rabbi Yehuda explain that.
Right. Yeah. Well, explain what? Explain the question that Tosfos brings.
No, explain why, even though it's the derisa,
yeah,
why he doesn't do it.
Right. But that's a different question to what we're asking at the moment. We're not asking that question at the moment.
No,
that's the next question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting the way the Gemara looks at it, because normally you say we would think the first question would be, how do you know? Where do we know? Which is actually the next question the Gemara is going to ask. From where do you know that a sukkah which is higher than 20 amos is possible? You think that's the one we started with. But the Mishnah here, the Gemara here, seems to have a more fundamental question, which is, why has the Mishnah said possible when it could have said takant? It could have said remedy. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Why it's gone for that? But we'll come on to this. That's what we'll see. Rabbi Yehuda is going to say the 3 proofs that are offered for why it's higher than 30. He doesn't accept any of them. Yeah. Anyway, let's look at. He's not suggesting that sukkah is not to oraisa. He's not saying that's the reason. He's just saying is that the reason you're going to say the reason why the Torah says it has to be less than 20. He says I just don't accept those reasons. Okay. Look at the next Tosfos. D'oraisa tani pasula. So since sukkah is d'oraisa, Chazal only had permission, only really allowed to say possible or kosher. Says Tosfos, "Tihave tana yimat." So says Tosfos, because think about it, if Chazal had said a sukkah which is higher than 20 amos, you should lower the schach. Chashin dilma ta'i inish lomer yimat l'chatchila. People might think, if they tell us you know what? Your schach too high. You should lower it a bit. People think, it's b'diavad. The rabbis, Rabbi came to see my sukkah. He said, I think your schach is too high. I think you should lower it. They think, no, he's been machmir. It's a chumrah. It's a chumrah. And remember, where did we think of it? Where we talked about chumrah just before? When he came to the mavoi, which was a derabanan. Yeah? Because of the derabanan, it's a chumrah. There's no necessity to say it. People have a mindset which is, if a rabbi says you should do something to it, they think, yeah, okay, nice idea, but it's not necessarily necessary. So therefore, if the Tana of the Mishnah said Yimat instead of Posel, people would have thought, Yimat, it's okay. I'm not so machmir. For me, it's okay. Yeah. You're laughing. I think it's a laugh from recognition, right? Yes, we're recognizing that's human nature. Yeah. So this was the advice. Taya inish lomer. So people make the time yimat l'chadchila. But yes, in the first instance, you should, if it's higher than 20 amos, you should lower it. But to be eved kashera. But after the event, it's all kosher, which it's clearly not, according to Tanakama. But dark dek b'lushono. And therefore, the Mishnah had to be very precise with its language. So, although theoretically you could have said Yimat, and therefore it would have been more parallel to the Mishnah in Eruvin, the truth is there's an issue here, which is people would misinterpret it. And what's the problem here? If people think, that's only the chatchila, but the evidence it's still okay. Truth is, they're going to be sitting in Apostle Sukkah. And they're going to go over an Issa, not an Issa, but they're going to be over a mitzvah the Oraisa, and they're going to be making a bracha every night. They make a bracha in that sukkah. It's a bracha of Vatala. You can't say a Shekli Sunday. It's not a kosher sukkah. You can't make a bracha over something which is possible. You wouldn't think you came into shul first day sukkahs and your lulav is in half. But yeah, it's okay. Rabbi said, really, it's not so good. It's not so good. But yeah, okay for you, Rabbi. You want to get muhuda, you want to, the most beautiful, you want to spend a fortune on your, go for you. But
when I was in Greece, we had a situation where it was raining one day, and the guy who was doing running the event decided in his infinite wisdom to put the roof on.
Right.
And Rabbi Schlesinger from Gateshead.
Did he make rackets?
He decided he went in. We did the shape of sukkah, and I went out. When I said, "You do realise the roof's on?"
Yeah.
And there was this almighty argument.
Raise the roof. Yeah. There you go. That's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah, people say, it's okay. That's the problem. You can't mess about here. So let's go back. Therefore, had to teach Posel. Even though it's not the best language, it's not the most refined thing it could have said. It's a bit harsh to say Posel. Again, you wouldn't. If you ask the rabbi around to your house, say, "Can you just check my sukkah's okay?" And he comes around, takes one of it, and goes, "Posel." You're not going to get invited back, are you? You're not going to give me you're not going to have a l'chaim in the sukkah with him, are you? Right? It's not the most. You have to find. There's ways of saying things, right? So we acknowledge that although that's not the best way for the mission to actually have put it, nevertheless, it has to sometimes. It's not as good as it is. He says, it's not as refined as saying reduce it. Again, the rabbi comes around and he said, "Look at my sukkah." Say, "Okay, you know what? I think you should just do this and do that." You say it gently, right? However, when it comes to the mavoi, the alleyway, which is the rabbanon, we're not so concerned. But therefore, you can't say reduce it. Shu lishna me'ilya, which is a more refined way of saying gentle things. Ashkecham bereish Pesachim, as you see, the Gemara in the beginning of Pesachim says, Sha'akum HaKasuv, Kama osios shalola hotzi dava maguna mipiv. We know there's the famous saying Chazal, which is, sometimes the Torah says, the Torah could have said behema to meya, and save words. It doesn't say that. It's when it says a tray for animal, it doesn't say it. It says behema she'ena shelo tahora, right? Yeah, it's not kosher. Instead of saying it's treif. Although it uses more words, it's more. So that's one thing. However, says Tosfos, however, Rashi didn't give that explanation, did he? Yeah. Rashi actually said because it's the Oraisa, Chazal didn't have the permission to say Yimat, to give it a kanta, to give a remedy. Look, he said, so that's the first thing. Says Tosfos Inami. So alternatively, Yeshloma de Loshen Yimat Mashma Chumra. So I mentioned this earlier. Another way of looking at it is the reason why the Mishnah couldn't use the word Yimat is because the word Yimat, lower it, implies that it's a Chumra, that it's a stringency. Durabanan Ba'alma, that is a rabbinic stringency only. Upasula Mashma D'Oraisa, whereas Pasula, invalid, implies something which is D'Oraisa. So that's what Rashi was trying to tell us. Yeah, the Mishnah had to use the language of posel. It couldn't use words yimat because yimat suggests something which is merely a chumrah. 20 amos, we're going to see, no one, even Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say it's a chumrah, he just doesn't accept it, right? But the Tanna Kama says it's not a chumrah, it's halacha. Halacha Moshe Messina even. So you can't say yimat because that suggests we're just being stringent and but we're not. And then a very interesting question. Right, Joseph brings a fascinating question on this. We do find another case, the mitzvah d'Rabbanan, where Chazal say posel. Gemara in Shabbos. Look, it says Perik B'Amed Madlikim in Shabbos. Ta'amrina ner Chanukah shenicha lemala me'esrim amma sula kasuka. Gemara there says when it comes to ner Chanukah, if a person places them above 20 amas, they're posel. Posel. Ner Chanukah, midoraisa or midorabbanan? Rabbanan. So how can you use the word posel for something which is dorabbanan? Could sukkah like sukkah. Ukumavui. Agav, it's non sukkah nakanami gabi ner Chanukah. Pasula. There. Now this is the question on mavoi. Why doesn't it, if you can use mavoi in relation to if you can use posel in relation to ner Chanukah, why can't you, which is dorabbanan? Why can't you use it in relation to mavoi, which is also dorabbanan? So inami ihave tani yimat hu mashma k'mos shayata medlekes yishofena v'ze'enu l'man da'ama hadlaka ose mitzvah. The reason why the Gemara in Shabbos couldn't have said the words, had to use the word pasula in relation to ner Chanukah, even though it's a d'Rabbanan, is because if it said yimat, bring them down, you might have thought, even though I lit them above 20 amos, I can now bring them down. Now we know there's a machlokas. What is the mitzvah? And we say the mitzvah is, according to the one opinion says, and we I think we go with this opinion, which is that halakha osa mitzvah. It's the lighting which is the mitzvah, not the hanacha. What you're meant to do is you're meant to place the chanukah in the right place first, then light it. You're not meant to light it and then move it. Yeah. Now the problem is if we say yimat, if the Gemara in Shabbos has said if you were to light your sukkah, if you don't light your sukkah, if you were to light your menorah above 20 amos, you know what you should do? What's the remedy? Bring it down. If they say that, they can't say that there because that suggests that goes against the Manda Amma who says that it's the lighting which is the mitzvah. Yeah. And even according to the one that says that placing is the mitzvah, and even the one that says no, the placing is the mitzvah, there's still a problem because if you light it in a place where it's not kosher, we have a halachas in relation to menorah, Chanukah, which is you can't light it in a way where it looks like you're lighting it for your own purposes. So, for example, it says if you can't light it less than 10 tefachim off the ground, because lower than 10 tefachim, because then it just looks like you're lighting torches, right? So you don't trip over, right? No, not doing it for the mitzvah. You have to put it in a place davka where you wouldn't normally light something, so it's clear that you're lighting it for the sake of the mitzvah. Even according to the one who says the mitzvah is placing it, not lighting it, we'll be still concerned if you could say light it up there when it's too high and then bring it down. You've lit it in a place where it's clearly not for you. You're doing it for other reasons.
The reason why in Israel they actually light it outside. You actually have it in a box outside. So it's,
that's the ideal place of doing it. It's meant to be on the opposite side of the mezuzah. We do it inside because of we're concerned of what people might do to it. But but you're right. Sometimes because they live high up. Yeah, also. Yeah. Okay. So you see, I think the interesting. Yes, it says Ka'amina Gabi Hadlaka Bifnim. I think your point here. The last bit of Tosfos, because Amina Gabi Hadlaka Bifnim V'Nicha B'Chutz, as we say in relation to lighting it inside and then taking it outside. Yeah, then it looks like you're just carrying it through because you need the light to see where you're going. Okay, let's just go back in the Gemara, and we'll just tie it up here. Maybe we'll leave it here. I thought we'd get to the bottom of the page. There we go. Yeah, just one bit more. Let's go back in the Gemara. We are 2, 4, 6, 8, about 9 lines down in the Gemara. 2 words from the end of the line. V'ibais ema. Yeah. If you can see a couple more lines lower down, there's a bracket at the beginning of the line. With an asterisk. Go 2 lines up from there towards the end of the line. V'ibais ema. So we said the Gemara answers the reason why our Tana had to teach say Pasula and not Yimat is because Sukkah is Doraisa, whereas Mavo is Durabanan. V'bayas Ema, and even you can even say, if you prefer, you can say, but Doraisa Nami Tane Takanta. You could even if you want to say, and you could say this, that even with the Doraisa, you could say Atakanta, you could say how to remedy it. Yeah, there's plenty of situations, and when it comes to Torah laws, we give a remedy to it. So even here you could give a remedy. However, Mia Sukkah, and again, we do actually want to put in these words. They change it. Look at the left-hand column margin. Sarachloma Danafshinan Milei. However, the issue is when it comes to Sukkah, there are a number of different halachas in relation to Sukkah. Pasik Vatani Basula. Rashi is going to say that if the Mishnah had said, if you place the strach over 20 amas high, bring it down, then it's going to have to get into the question of, and you have to reduce the walls, and you have to make sure this and that. There are lots of different halachas in relation to that. And if you're going to give a remedy for every single one, you get beyond the realms of, how many lines was our Mishnah? 2 lines and 1 very big one. Yeah? 4 lines. 4 lines in total in Mishnah. If you start going to put it into the Mishnah, every single remedy for every single particular psul of a sukkah, you're going to be writing a sefer halacha, right? Which is not what the Mishnah is. Yeah. So what does Gemara say? It says Tani pasik v'tani pasula. It makes a psak. It's a psak. It's a very definite and finite ruling. This is possible, and it moves on. You want to know how to remedy it? Okay, go and ask Shaila, right? But you need to know. You want to know psak halacha. This is psak halacha. It's possible. We'll stop. Look at Rashi. If you want, even if you want to say that when it comes to Torah law, you can still give a remedy. Sukkah de nafshi milse. Ve'ein domim tzikanoseihem zulazu. And each remedy is going to be different from each other. So if the remedy for the skach is going to be one thing, the remedy for the walls is going to be, for example, if the walls are too narrow, if there are not enough walls, each remedy is going to be different from the other. You're going to have to spell out every single remedy. Could go on, for example, its height, you have to reduce. If it's too low, you have to raise it. If it doesn't have enough walls, then build some. And if its shade is greater than the sun, you have to increase it. That's why it just gave a definitive ruling of posel. Therefore, it's a catch-all. This is possible. It's possible, and that's what we're going to see. We're going to see, Ludav Agazel, possible. We're going to see every single mission is just going to give you definitives. It's not going to give you remedies. Whereas, and then just finish off the Gemara. Whereas, compare that to the Mavoi. Back in Mavoi, under the first line underneath the bracket. Mavoi dolo nafish milei tani takanta. Whereas if it comes to a mavoi, the alleyway where there aren't a huge amount of halachas in relation to it, then you can teach the remedy. Says Rashi, but also Mishnah. There in the Mishnah, what's the issue? You've got 2 walls. As long as you've got 3 walls, you've put in the beam, or either a beam or a lechi, and you're good to go. Not much you need to do. So you can tell them what to do. Reduce it. Yeah, and we're going to see also, if the gap is too wide, also reduce the gap. It's always going to be reduced. So there, it's much easier. You're not going to get into a whole Megillah, and therefore it's much easier. So there's 2 ways of looking. Either we don't have permission we only have permission to say posel or kosher, the Torah law, or because it's so involved, we only have got time to say posel or kosher. We haven't got time to give it to Kanta. Whereas with Mavoi, either because it's a Rabbanon, we're allowed to say to Kanta, or because there are not that many laws relating to it, much easier to say. It's easy enough to say to Kanta. Okay, we'll leave it there. Hashem will carry on next time. I see the Gemara now is going to ask, Menahani Mili, where do we know that a sukkah which is higher than 20 amos is possible? We're going to give 3 opinions, 3 sources.
I love learning.
Sure.